love the Lord. She has 2 older brothers and 9 younger siblings. 4 years ago, she moved to Indianapolis on her own to work in anti-trafficking and various other ministries. She's currently the director of security at the Hope Center, Indy, and works with their K-9 program. Outside of work, she likes spending time to go see her siblings at home, doing evangelism ministry. She likes traveling. She likes to work at her church in the nursery and with the youth and women's ministry, and she's trying new things that scare her. My ultimate goal is to glorify God and find ways to lay down my life for Christ and others. So before I bring up Bree, I know for, like I said, this fourth year for the women's ministry, the women's conference, and knew Samantha. I wanted to bring Samantha back, and I had to find another person. And I was like, Lord, you're gonna have to show me, and I'm thinking and thinking and thinking, and I'm thinking and thinking, right? So in my own power, God's like, no, that's not gonna work. So Michael went to camp, and he talked to you guys about camp, and for a full week, and he came back, and he was like, okay. And I said, yes. He said, there was a girl there, and she was real good with the kids. She talked to them, and she just flowed with them, and she might be. And I was like, well, get a number, get her name. And so that's what he did. And the minute we had talked on the phone, and she told me what she did, and just like it was a spirit connection, and I was like, God knows everything. Like to the last minute, there was nobody besides Samantha, which was fine, right? But still wanting, you know what I mean, the flow of 2 speakers and testimonies and everything. God knew the week that Michael went to camp that he would see Bree, and that Bree is here today to bless us. So thank you, Bree.
Before I start, I'm going to pray, mostly for me, so we just do that right now. Lord, thank you so much for opportunities that you give us. Thank you for including us in your work. I also just want to thank you that you give us these moments where we get to meet other believers. It's just amazing to me as I've been around the country and even around the world, how there's just like this connection with other believers. So thank you for that. Please speak through me. You know that I don't always have the best words, so I just pray that your spirit would move tonight, that you would speak to my heart and those listening, that we would just draw closer to you tonight, that you would individually speak to each person what they need to hear, and that we would just be drawn to you. In Jesus' name. So one of the first things I wanted to tell you all is just like a little bit about myself. I'm actually pretty shy. People don't know that sometimes. I, up to 2 years ago, would have said public speaking was the thing I was most scared of. Still don't love it, but God has continued to put me in those things. I'm not the most articulate. I'll probably use filler words. I just have to come up with things on the spot sometimes, and I'm not the most charismatic person talking to people. I didn't go to a Bible school or any kind of seminary, Christian college even. All of my sisters did. I just went to a small public college, and even that I did online. My room is a mess right now, and I am probably the worst procrastinator you have ever met. So I just say all that, not as a pity thing, but I know I have strengths too. I know I have things I'm good at. But I just point all that out to say, sometimes when I'm telling stories, I just want to tell people this isn't because I'm good at things or because I can speak publicly or I have the right words to talk to people. It's actually, I'm pretty clumsy often. It's actually, God uses our weaknesses and then the strengths He's given me, and He'll use that strength. And then also bring in this place where I just really thought that I would never be able to do something to show how strong He is. And then that can just point back to what God does in life. So as I was thinking about surrender, again, this was kind of, just sprung on me. I was just like, yes, I'll do that. So I just Googled the definition of surrender, and the things that stood out to me is like surrender is to cease resistance, or to submit to an authority. It's also an agreement to stop fighting or give up control. So I was thinking about that. A lot of people have said that, not being in control. And often in my life, I've felt that when I try to control is where I kind of mess up. So I just was thinking through my life, and I thought maybe I would tell you a little bit from my teen years to like how I ended up in Indiana all on my own, away from my family. I grew up in a Christian home. Both my parents are very strong Christians, and I was born again at a very young age. I remember, I think I was about 3 or 4, and my dad said to me, actually my brothers were getting baptized, and a strange turn of events is that it was my 2 older brothers getting baptized, and neither of them are walking with the Lord today. But I was sitting in church with my dad, and he said, do you think you'll want to do that someday? Do you want to follow Jesus? And I said, yes. He said, are you sure you want to follow Jesus? And I said, yeah. And in all of my memory, I actually can't remember a time after that where I didn't feel like either I wanted to or like, this is the only choice for me. I got nothing else. Like, Jesus is all I have. So from a very young age, I was walking with the Lord, and my dad discipled us very well. Like I said, I was born in Michigan, and at 15, I moved to Missouri, which is kind of a hard age to move. I had a lot of younger siblings, and I helped take care of them, which some people think poorly upon. I loved it. I still love them all very much. But then, like, where this story really starts, and where I kind of started learning surrender and like service to God was, I think it was like 8 years ago. I can't actually remember exactly. It was actually my little sister, Samantha. So we were talking, I was like, oh, my little sister, she just got married. So I was like, oh. She went on a choir tour with a youth group that wasn't even our church. But she had a friend there, and they started traveling around to sing, and she came home, and out of all of the different places and prisons and things they went to sing at, she was so excited about this place she had gone called the Hope Center in Indianapolis. It's called the Hope Center Indy. And she started talking to my dad about it and me about it, and it was an anti-trafficking, it was like a rehab program basically for women who have been trafficked. And she got really interested in fighting human trafficking. I was kind of like, yeah, Sam, I was working a couple of jobs. I think I might have started college on that at that point, and I was helping take care of my little sister, and I was a nanny at the time. But she was really excited, and Sam was always more excited than I was, and more exciting. She was way more fun. And she just was really interested in this program, and she decided she wanted to fight trafficking. So around this time, and all through my teen years, I had just been like, I just want to serve God. And also, one of my favorite books, it is written by one of my heroes about one of my childhood heroes. It's called A Chance to Die. It's about Amy Carmichael, and it was written by Elizabeth Elliot. And something about that, always looking for a chance to lay down your life, like a chance to die for others. Maybe not always like physically and in reality, but like kind of giving your life away. Really, that's what I wanted. I was like, God, I'm gonna give my life away for you. So I was always just that way, but mostly I was doing that through babysitting, watching my siblings. My youngest sister was special needs, so I helped take care of her a lot, and just kind of like growing in those things. And then my sister Sam wanted to go to Thailand to a training for people who wanted to fight trafficking for a summer. And she was 19 years old, so, well, she was 18, but she was going to be 19 by the time she left, and I would have been 21 by the time we left. And she told my dad, and my dad was kind of like, yeah, okay. And she came to me and she said, Bree, I really want to go do this, but Dad's kind of like thinks it's silly. So, like, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, let me talk to Dad. And my dad's great. It was just Sam always had crazy ideas. And I said, Dad, what if I go with Sam to Thailand and we're going together then? So it's not like one person just going off. And to my dad's credit, he let us, which a lot of people thought he was crazy because he didn't know anyone in Thailand. And we were gone for a whole summer. And while I was there, I just learned a lot about like saying yes, even when it wasn't something that I wanted or felt like if God put something in front of me, just say yes and go do it. surrendering like what I thought my life might look like and my comfort, being willing to do things that made me anxious, and also kind of giving up this, like seeing hard things, taking it and then like giving it back to God, and knowing He is the God of justice. He is the one that uses us, but ultimately He will make everything right. We did a lot of very hard things. We saw a lot of children who've been trafficked. We went to the red light district and tried to talk with women. And it was a very good time, but I still was doing it for Sam. She wants to work in anti-trafficking. But while I was there, I met a man who, he was one of our teachers, and he worked for the FBI and was the head of Southeast Asia's crimes against children investigations. And for whatever reason, he saw me and talked with me, and he said, have you ever thought about law enforcement? You have a good personality for it, and we always need women, like what would you think about that? And so I was like, yeah, that would be cool. So in my head, this is what I was gonna go do now. My dad was not as crazy about it. And so I just kept going through college and kind of taking on these classes, and my plan was I would probably go become a police officer and then go into federal investigations later on. My dad was kind of like, he wouldn't tell me no, because if my dad had told me no, I would have been like, okay, but he just was not the biggest fan. And then one day, a friend of my dad's, actually backing up, Sam had continued to tell my dad about the Hope Center Indy, and so my dad had actually become friends with the director, and he had started donating time to help them with like business decisions, because my dad's a businessman, and they became really good friends. And so one time Pastor Hubert was at my dad's house, and I was in college and like really busy, and I just walked up and introduced myself to him because that was polite. He was in my parents' living room, and he said, your dad has been talking to me about you. Would you want an internship? And he said, if you come intern with security, I'll introduce you to a guy who trains police dogs, and you can kind of like see if you like that. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe. And at this time, I had kind of been like feeling God telling me, like instead of being so scared to do something and scared to make the right choice, just say yes. Like if something's in front of you, just say yes and do it. And then if God closed a door, God closed a door. So that's kind of where I was. And so I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to actually be going and working at a camp that I had worked at for 4 summers, and so this was my 5th summer. And then after that, like, I'll come. And then a week later, my dad said, hey, Pastor Hubert wants you to call him. And I said, okay. So I made a phone call, and he was like, actually, we really need help. When can you come? And I was like, well, I can't come till after camp, so I'll come in August. And it's interesting looking back, because my parents sometimes are more protective of my sisters. They kind of just would let me go. And I always like to do things for God, but I drove out to Indianapolis all on my own that summer and just showed up at this place where I didn't know anybody, and I'm a shy girl. I knew Pastor Hubert, and I had talked to 2 other women on the phone, and that was all. I was just gonna show up. So I did that, and it was hard for me. I always thought I was an introvert, but I was from a big family. So it was like the quietness was hard, like trying to make friends was hard, walking into a church alone was hard. Like I was so used to walking in with like a big group of sisters, or always holding a baby, or like all these kind of like protection things. But I just continued to think of the verse in Psalms, actually in Proverbs, where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. And so I was just kind of like, well, I'll just trust in God. Like, I'm just going to I don't know how things are going. This seems crazy to me. I don't really want to be here long term, but I'm going to be here. And I'm going to serve the Lord with all my might and do everything I can, like, right here. So I was doing that, and then, that was in August. I came here for an internship. And then it was Easter the next spring. I went home to Missouri for Easter. I still go home for every holiday, so I see my family plenty, don't feel too bad for me. And my different younger sister, Savannah, had become very interested in doing ministry at abortion clinics. And we had always been, my parents had 12 children. We were very pro-life, like that was just kind of part of it. But my sister really wanted to go do this ministry, but my dad was kind of like unsure. It's kind of dangerous, you know. And a pastor friend of his was going, and Savannah wanted to go along. And so I said, well, Dad, like, what if I go with her? Like, I'll go with her, and then I think one of my other sisters may have come, and then a brother, like all younger. And they're like, what if I go with them? And I will, you know, kind of keep an eye on them. And Brian, our friend, will be there too. He's like my uncle, like it would have been good. And so Dad said it was okay. So we went, and while I was there, I just walked up to random people. Again, very shy, but I had learned during this time to, first of all, say yes whenever anyone asked me to hang out, because I had no friends here. So I was just like, I'll hang out with whoever, whenever, like we'll go do that. And then also just to introduce myself to people and be like, hey, this is who I am. And then kind of just start conversations. So I just started walking up to some guys standing there, and I was like, hey, I'm Bree. We're just here our first time. It's nice to meet you. And I actually met a man. He said he was from Indiana, and I knew his name. He told me his name was David, and I forgot his friend's name. There was two of them. And it was such a wild thing because he said, did you say you're from Indianapolis? And I said, well, I'm there right now. Again, I thought I was there for like a couple more months, and then I was moving back to Missouri. And he said, I have a friend who does ministry at the abortion clinic there. His name is Brian. He didn't give me a last name. And he was like, this is the address of the clinic, which is not that much information, honestly. And I didn't ask them for any more because I don't know why I did ask them. But I came back and I was like, okay, I want to go do this. And so I started looking on Facebook for groups or trying to Google stuff, and nothing was coming up. And I was just praying and praying about it, and I had Fridays off all the time. So I just said, okay, God, I'm going to go show up at this clinic on a Friday morning. It was in a bad part of Indy where I'd been told not to go by myself. But I was like, I'll go, it's in the morning, and if I see men with signs standing out there, I'll go. And if not, I'll just keep driving. And I called my dad and told him, and he was okay with it, and my sister knew. And so I went out there, and there was a man standing there, and so I pulled up and walked up to him, and I think I freaked him out, because he was like, who's this young girl? And I just said, hey, I'm Bree. I would love to stand with you guys if you'll let me. And he said, that's great. His name was Steve. And then he was kind of talking to me. He said, my friend Brian will be here later. So I met Brian, and we've actually become good friends. He ended up being the one who organized everything there. And this is just another wild driver standing there, and he starts asking me questions about like how I grew up and like what I believed. And then I said, like, my dad used to do street ministry. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to start preaching soon. So hopefully I was like, no, it's fine. And so he started preaching. And I've known Brian now for 3 years. And I used to go out with him 3 times a week to the clinics. I've never seen him do this again. But for whatever reason, that day he was talking, and then a girl came to start walking up, and he just went, okay, it's your turn, and stepped away. And I was like, I just guess I have to start talking. So I started trying to talk to her and asked her if I could pray with her. And it's probably exactly what I needed, honestly, to start being able to talk and be able to do that. So then I started going out to the clinics, and this was, my school year was almost finished, that first school year in Indy where I was an intern. And so I've been doing this ministry at the Hope Center, and then I was teaching some classes, interacting with the women. I was doing this ministry at the abortion clinics. I never really found a church, and that was really hard. I hadn't really built, like, I had a couple friends, but they were all from work. And that's really hard because working with women like this who have been so traumatized is so intense that, like, I didn't have any other friends, but when they left work, they just wanted to think about something else, like do something else, hang out with other people. And so I was just there a lot, and I was just like always working and always in this intense environment and didn't have any other support in the area. So I was getting ready to go, and then one time at the clinic in May, there was a church there who was coming to help, and a little boy invited me to their church's evangelism conference the next day. And I was like, yeah, I'll come. So I went there. I knew a handful of the people. And one of the women from the church and was like, I would love to introduce you to one of our pastors. So she introduced me to this pastor. His name was Hack. This Pastor Hack. He said, oh, I'd love to talk to you sometime. And I'm like, that was all. I ended up leaving for the summer. I went back home. My brother got married, all these things. But I wanted to come back. I felt like I wanted to come back to Indy the next year. So I was like, okay, I'll come back to Indy in August. And I had asked him, because I hadn't gotten to work with the dogs as much as I'd like. I had just like a couple times seen it work. And so I was going to come back. And so I came back in August. And within the first 2 weeks, I was like terribly homesick. Like I did not want to be here. I was like, I want to move back to Missouri. And I was having these arguments with God where I was like, I want to move back to Missouri. And he was like, for what? What are you going to do if you move back? I was like, nothing, but I'll have friends. Like, I don't know. And he's like, you really don't even have very many friends there. Most of them have gotten married and moved away. And I was like, well, my family's there. And so I was like having this back and forth. And he was just like, I have work for you here. What will you do there? And I said, okay, God. I was literally on a walk. And I said, okay, God, I'll stay here, but you have to give me a church. And I'm not joking. I don't believe this stuff most of the time, but my phone buzzed right then. And I looked down, and it was a text message from that pastor I met back in May. And he said, hey, Bree, this is Pastor Pat. I don't know if you remember. I'm planting a church, and I'm looking for a core team, and your name came up. And I don't even know how my name could come up, because he didn't know anyone I knew. But I was like, okay, like, I guess, so, needless to say, I went and met him for coffee, and that's the church I go to. Like, it's just, that's how it is. And I just, as those things have happened, when I need reassurance from the Lord, it's like always right there. And that's kind of what I was going to say, is like, when you say yes, God is there with you. Even camp, like, that's kind of a crazy story. Obviously, I don't know very many people from here. I'm here because I was at a random camp. What's funny is I don't even go to the church or know the church who runs the camp. This last year, well, actually about a little over a year ago, my dad saw that, like, some of my job was weighing on me pretty heavy. And he was like, I think it's time. Well, this is another part I forgot to let you know. I was living on campus. So I had an apartment at the Hope Center right next door to the survivors, and I could never really leave work. Every time I stepped outside my door, they were there. I still sometimes get phone calls, but I would regularly be like woken up by them yelling and be like, okay, I gotta go handle this, or the fire alarm going off and I have to go take care of that, or the ambulance had to come. So I was just never away from my job or away from like the very high stress first responder-ish situations. So about a year ago, my dad was like, I think you need to move off campus, and if you're staying in Indy, that's great, that's where God has you, but we should start looking for something. So I started thinking about buying a house, and I was like, I'll buy a house, get some roommates, this is what we'll do. And I just kept praying, like, God, if this is what you have, like, let it work out. And so I asked a coworker, she had bought a house with her husband, and I was like, who did you use as your realtor? And so she gave me the name of the realtor. She said, hey, he goes to my husband's aunt's church. So he's a Christian. I was like, that'd be cool. Well, I was just looking at houses, and one time I showed up kind of probably a little shook up because it's something that happened at work to look at a house. And so he knew what my job was, and so we started talking about it and that kind of like high stress thing. And he was like, my church does this camp. Would you want to be a counselor there? They didn't know me. I don't really know. They just invited me to come be a counselor at camp. And I was just like, yeah, sure. And so everything's just been like, yeah, sure. And then like God does these things, and it's so wild to me. Let's see if I can get. And so another verse that really kind of reminds me of all this is Romans 12:1 says, I appeal to you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. And so, as I'm doing all these things, and as like I'm dealing with these women and it's hard, or I'm going to the abortion clinic and that can be hard, or going and doing street ministry, like in parts of Indy that aren't great, and some people are like, maybe you shouldn't do that. I'm just kind of like, what other way am I supposed to lay my life down? This is where God has put me. So let me offer myself as a living sacrifice. And I am not at all thinking that this is where everyone should lay their life down. My mom had 12 kids, and if that isn't laying your life down to like have and disciple 12 kids, I don't know what is. And so but I think that we often look at what we have and what we have to do that's hard, and we forget that this is like an opportunity. This is an opportunity to lay ourselves down, to give up control, to like be a living sacrifice for Christ. And I was also just thinking about like practical, like what does it look like? Or not what does it look like, what do I do when I'm not feeling that? When I don't feel surrendered? Like when this is hard, when I just like quite honestly want to go home because what am I doing here? Or I'm like, oh, my words are so lame, I say the wrong thing all the time. And I just want to let you know, sometimes when I say the worst thing in evangelism, and then you just like see someone's heart change, and you're like, well, that was God, because what I said was really lame. So I was just thinking about this, and I think that you find surrender by gazing at Jesus. So John said, when Jesus came down to be baptized, he said, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And anytime I'm struggling or think something's too hard, it's like, if you just look at Jesus, just look at what he's done for you. Look at like that kind of sacrifice. I just can kind of let it go. Like, we were singing earlier, and there were two different songs that talked about, it's referring to Revelation, where it talks about the elders casting down their crowns and crying out, holy is the Lord. And that's such a thought of like, even in the life beyond, like even in eternity, they're casting their crowns before the Lord because they realize like it's not like surrender ends here. Surrendering to Christ is the best way to live. Even in eternity, even in what is like going to be glorious, that is the glory. It's like you will feel so much more fulfilled when you're just like walking with Christ. Sometimes people say like, well, my dad owns businesses, and they're like, you could go home and work for your dad, and I would make more money doing that and be super comfortable, but I would be miserable because this is where God has called me. And so it's like not seeing it as, yes, we're giving up control, but either you're a slave to Christ or you're a slave to sin. Like you're one or the other. And trust me, this is so much better. I've seen it. I was looking at 2 Corinthians 5, verses 9 through, I think I'm going to read through 14, but, through 15. And it says, therefore, we also have as our ambition, whether at home or absent, to be pleasing to him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may be recompensed for his deeds in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. Therefore, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade men. But we are made manifest to God, and I hope we are made manifest also in your consciences. We are not again commending ourselves to you, but are giving you an occasion to be proud of us, so that you will have an answer for those who take pride in appearance and not in heart. For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God, and if we are of sound mind, it is for you. And this is the part that really gets me. For the love of Christ compels us, having concluded this, that one died for all, and therefore all died. And he died for all, so that they who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and rose again on their behalf. I think sometimes people say, for the love of Christ compels us, and they think like Christ's love towards us, which is true. But it's like a back and forth. It's like Christ's love for us should bring our love for Christ, and that compels us to share with others. That compels us to go and live in a way that's not for ourselves, but for him who died and rose again. So, thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Bree. All right, who wants to play a game?
Yeah.
Yay!
Woo.
All right, I need two. Addison, can you come pick? We're gonna have two volunteers, but I need you to come pick two names for me.
Madeline. Man.
All right, you guys both can come up. Stay here, one right here. You can stay down there. And then you can go on the other side. What we're gonna do now is, can somebody, I know you guys have phones. Can somebody give me, let's do 2 minutes. Okay, can somebody put 2 minutes on their phone? Okay, so since you're standing on this side, what the game is I'm going to give you a paper, and on it, it has surrender to him, which is the theme of our conference, right? So in 2 minutes, this side encourages Darla,